Well, happy non-specific Sunday. There's nothing attached to this Sunday except being with God. Last week after I left church, Charles and I have been to this gem and mineral club in Prescott, and I found these rocks. Most of you probably seen them, but they're called dendrites, and they have like plant shapes to them. These guys have been around for like generations looking at rocks and exploring rocks. Well, they have a mineral show at the Finley Center once a year, and I went to volunteer last week, so I went down right after church, and I got to just walk around and look at God's creation in minerals, just the variety of things that are out there. And I signed up to work probably the most popular table. How many people know what a geode is? Okay, if you don't, look it up, because I don't have a picture, but it looks like a coconut that you crack in half, and when you crack it in half, it opens and reveals some kind of crystal formation inside. I'm sure you've all seen them before. But at the table, people could buy a rock. They pick out which rock they thought was going to be a good one, and then they had a special tool that had a chain and cutting blades on it, and they cracked the rock open. And the reveal was, once the person bought the rock, the person that cracked the rock would hold it together, and the person that bought the rock was going to be the first one ever to see what was inside. And so there's all this oohing and aahing and clapping, and people were drawn to it, and they just kept coming. But these Moroccan rocks were probably the most popular. They were about the size of a small coconut, and it opened it up, and it was just, everybody just gathered around to look at what it was going to be inside. And nobody was really disappointed. You know, there are brothers and sisters that go, well, mine's better than yours. Yours isn't. Look at this. But they were so excited. And then I had to keep it, band it together and put it in the bag. And I was a little nervous because I said, what if I drop this thing? They're all excited about this, and what if I drop it and smack it? I'll be kicked out of the club before I really got going. But I think about how nature works, how amazing God has made things that we take for granted. But if you look at the amount of the variety of animals and plants and insects even. I was at the gym this morning, and before I left, there's a giant green grasshopper stuck to the case of where the sign-in table is, and just sitting there like it didn't know where to go. So I scooped it up in my motorcycle helmet and set it free. It turned around and said thank you. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but you made my day. I know it was thinking that. But God has made so many things that we can't keep track of them. On the earth's surface, and I'll take guesses, how much of the earth's surface, you count all land, all water, all everything, how much do you think that man is either living in or cultivating? What percentage do you think is used by man? 6%? 5%? 9? 20? Well, I don't know. John's got 8. Susan's got 4. Well, actually, I didn't tell her. It's 4 to 5%. 4 to 5. All right, Mike puts up 4 at the end. You did. All right, show it next time. So 4 to 5% of the Earth's surface has got some kind of involvement in man. That doesn't mean we're not crossing oceans, but the Earth is 70% water, and most people are not living on the water, except Mike Parker might be if he didn't have kids and grandkids. But most people on the land we're living on doesn't include the polar caps, doesn't include forest and jungle for the most part, mountain ranges, deserts. Sierra Desert's pretty open. There's a lot of land that we don't. And if you fly on a plane and look down, you'll see little communities around. But there are large open spaces that man doesn't do. So we're still discovering things. There is recently, I don't know if you heard this or not, but the Mariana Trench, one of the trenches, I think it might be that one, they found living plants at the bottom. I mean, there's no light, there's no real oxygen, there's all this pressure. There's living fields of things down there that look like an alien landscape. But I want to talk today about the sower. And just so I spell that, it doesn't sound like sword, S-O-R-E, it's S-O-W-E-R, because Jesus used many parables. And one parable that is familiar to us is called the sower. And Jesus used parables to teach, but he confused people with them. He said things that would be like an allergy or, not an allergy, an analogy, or an allergy would come from the things that grow, like the sower. But there are other things that maybe not as relatable to us, like parables about the shepherd. I've never met a shepherd. About fishermen. Some of you guys might fish, but you're not fishermen. Who did? Ah. Okay. That's true. I've met a lot of shepherds, but not with sheep. Or vineyard workers. But the one that I like is this one, because we're not really involved with shepherds and vineyard workers and stuff, but we all have maybe planted things before. I'm going to be turning to Matthew 13. The definition of a parable is this. It's a specific type of story, often brief, with realistic characters and events intended to teach a moral or spiritual lesson. While stories can be about anything, parables are purposely crafted to convey a deeper meaning or truth, often through analogy or comparison. Not an allergy, an analogy. So Matthew 13, starting in verse 3, and this is out of the Amplified Version, so a little different from what you might be reading. He told them many things in parables, this is Jesus, saying, "Listen carefully. A sower went out to sow seed in his field. And as he sowed, some seed fell beside the road between the fields, and the birds came and ate it. Other seed fell on rocky ground where it didn't have much soil, or once they sprung up, because they had no depth or soil, they faded away. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away." Sorry, I messed that one up. "Other seed fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them out. Other seed fell on good soil and yielded grain. Some 100 times as much was sown, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear and heed my words." Matthew 13, 3 through 9. So this is also repeated in Mark 4 and Luke 8. It's a very popular one. And it's relatable today because we've all probably grown something. Has anybody not had a house plant or a garden or planted a tree? Has anybody in here not had your hands in the dirt at some point? Okay. I know, Isabel, your dad will get you some dirt. Yeah. We have things that, people have been out and planted forest. And I know growing up, we had a garden in our backyard. And the reason I didn't like tomatoes until recently is because I would go in the backyard and take a tomato with a little shaker of salt. And you could eat almost like an apple, but it tasted so good. There's flavor in a tomato. These tomatoes have no flavor at a store. I pulled carrots out of the ground, take the hose, wash it off. It still had the black dirt on it, but ate it just like that. Apples off the tree. My neighbors had raspberry bushes. And my neighbor kid, the same age as I was, we'd go out and pick all those raspberries off. And when the mom came out to get something to make a pie, they were stripped. They were stripped. And we were giving up because we had this rosy red ring around our mouth, because we couldn't stay off them. They were not potato chips. They were better than that. But things that came out of the ground that you grew. And the reason I say recently is Susan's got a greenhouse now, and she pulls tomatoes off. There's flavor in those tomatoes. She's got this lettuce that's almost spicy. Lettuce is boring, but this has got some spiciness to it. But, my story of growing is when I grew up, we had moved when I was about 11 or 12 into this house in the suburbs in Minneapolis. And we had this big backyard. My dad wanted to plant trees, but for the grass, he brought in sod. Has anybody worked with sod before? The big rolls of grass. And they come on a pallet, and they drop off pallets of sod. And I thought it was so cool and smelled so good, and there were still worms crawling through it. It was cool until I had to lay it out with my dad, because those things are heavy, and you have to lay it, and you have to stomp it into place. Well, when I bought my first house in Tempe back in '80, I had no money for sod. I'm not even sure if Arizona does sod. So the Arizona thing to do was to make your front yard rock for the most part. Everything was green in Minnesota, but it was rock, and I planted Italian cypresses. But I wanted grass in the backyard. So I learned about it. There was no internet at the time. I learned to prepare the ground, and I laid the seed, and then I put manure over the top. You ever work with manure? Fun stuff. Gets in everything. It smells great. But it keeps the birds from eating the seed. So over time, by watering it, I got a beautiful lawn. Now, I lost control of some of the seed, and it ended up in the cracks, and other weeds would pop up, and I have to pull those out. But at one point in the spring of '81, I had a beautiful green lawn. And then summer came. And I got tired of trying to work with the yard. And I let it go, and to deal with it, I closed the blinds. I closed the blinds over the windows so I didn't have to look at it. And probably within a month, I decided to just peek out and see what had happened. And I lost control of the yard. There was no sign of grass, because it was the monsoons, a couple good rains, that just put these weeds that are up to my waist. And I went outside and I surveyed the land, and I took my mower, and the mower gave a great effort and died over and over again, said, I'm not doing this. So I had to go rent a machine that chopped up the weeds. But that left these sharp, spiky weed shafts that would go right through your shoe. That yard never came back. I lost it. So I learned in the future, but it was an experience for me to actually grow a lawn, to have seed that actually popped out. There's something special. You can buy plants and all that stuff, and when we used to get plants for housewarming gifts, or other people brought a gift, we would soon after kill that thing unintentionally. We just look at the leaves just curl up. Somebody gave us an orchid a few years ago. Lovely orchid. Now it's just 2 twigs with some leaves on it and stuff. But there was one plant, and it's called an eternity plant. You ever heard of an eternity plant? This is what it looks like. In 2008, somebody, we don't know who gave it to, who was it? It was a lawyer at my dad's funeral. Well, he should have gave us a field, because we spent enough money with the guy, but this is an eternity plant, and in 2008, that's probably big for what it was, we got this thing, and now this is what it looks like today. Now, actually, this is 4 years ago. I had to move it from pot to pot to pot. It's taller than Susan. That's 4 years ago, so it's even grown from there. It is now coming up on 17. It's asked to get its driver's license. I said, not until you get through high school, but to have something around 17 years and still thriving blows me away. So even though we didn't plant it, we've kept it. It's moved. It just thrives. And it's amazing. And I can see why an average life is maybe around 20 years. How many trees, yeah, but how many plants do like that? So I think, when I think about growing things, I love the smell of things. I love the look of things. When it grows, I love to be in even mowed grass. Even though I grew up with allergies, mowed grass was something that smelled good to me. The flowers on trees and all that stuff. It reminds me. And Jesus uses this analogy to teach us about not the soil, but the seed. This story is not about the soil, it's about the seed. We're the seed. All of us are out here are the seed. So when Jesus talks, he later explains this, I think in the same chapter, in verses 18, 19, Jesus explains this parable to his disciples, just to make sure they have a clear understanding. Again, through the Amplified Version, it says, when anyone hears the word of the kingdom regarding salvation and does not understand and grasp it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is the one on whom the seed was sown beside the road. The path. A lot of people miss the path or willfully turn away from it. They get trampled underfoot. You know, our Earth is an amazing regenerative planet. The same amount of water is here, the same amount of material for the most part. We get things that fall from the sky once in a while, but overall this planet just keeps on. Things die, things get born, and just goes over and over from generation to generation. But the earth doesn't care about us. The earth doesn't say, I'm getting too warm, I should cool it out for you guys. You know, Mother Nature doesn't care for us. If you get lost out in Mother Nature, there's not trees that form arrows to show you which way to go and little fireflies that come by and lead you out of the woods. You're on your own. Wild animals at some point don't care about us. I think of people that have names like Grizzly Man, who was eventually a snack for one of the bears he hung out with, Tiger King, Siegfried and Roy. I was at this customer one day, and this guy trying to be real cool comes in with this like lime green snake wrapped around his arm. I go, that's a good looking snake. And he goes, oh, thanks. And I just happened to see him weeks later, same store. I go, hey, where's your buddy? And he goes, oh, I had to kill it. It attacked me. Well, that's its nature. It didn't owe you anything. You might have fed it properly and all that, but it doesn't wake up in the morning going, I got to take care of this guy. He's looking after me. Mother Nature doesn't care. Believe it or not, a lot of the people you work with don't really care about you. You know why? Because they'll walk by and say, how you doing? They don't even wait for your answer anymore. They just, how you doing? Fine. If you say anything but fine, they don't care. They just keep walking. Now, if they're really good friends and been there a long time, they might care. But I worked for a place 30 years, and I'll tell you, when I left, the phone got quiet. And actually, I appreciated it, but it was kind of disturbing, too. You know, there's a lot of things that don't care. Maybe you have family. Maybe in here we have the kind of relationships that do care. But it is said that the average American has between 3 and 5 close relationships. Now, I think that's on the high end, personally, unfortunately. If you're not talking about family, if you're talking about people you hang out with, and even those 3 to 5 people that are supposedly close to, things change. Their status changed from single to married. They move. Yeah, Patty. Their schedule changes. Their activity interests change. There's a lot of things that take us away from those relationships. And we'll see people, you know, you'll see people now that you see and you just pick right up with them. But you don't spend a lot of time on the phone, but you're just comfortable around them. You see them, it's all good. But a lot of times it is come and go friendships. And I think about a lot of people that I've known over the years. I'm still in touch with a few high school buddies. I'm still in touch with a few Navy people. I'm still in touch with some people from church from long ago that have moved. But it's more of a common relationship of convenience than it is of a practical nature. You know, part of it is our fault. Yes. The attention span of people 20 years ago was 2.5 minutes. You could study something or be involved in something for 2.5 minutes. What do you think the attention span of people is today? Who said that? Sean, did you say 45? Is that because yours is 45? Well, that is correct. He's correct. 45 seconds. Is anybody like me, you start a project, you set something down, you go and you start something else, and then you go back to what you did, and you have like 3 or 4 different, yes, there is something called a doorway effect. You know what a doorway effect is?
Yes.
What is it?
You walk through the doorway and it's gone.
Kind of, yes. You walk through the door and then you look back, because you're looking back at why you came in this room. So you're hoping there's an answer for why you left. And more times than not, you have to go back out and look around and figure out what you did to come back in. That's the doorway effect. So anytime you've seen something, you turn around and look, that's what you're doing. You're just trying to figure it out. You know, I really believe that there's value in Christianity. Because Christianity, you can't have a 2.5-minute attention span unless you just stay at it and stay at it and stay at it. Christianity is a marathon, not a 40-yard dash. The NFL uses 40-yard dashes now because they figure most people won't have to run that far. They just want to know how far you can get in 40 yards. Christians, it's a marathon. It's every day, getting up, putting your gym shoes on, wearing your funky little shorts, and hitting the road. Not practically, not like Pam, but I am one of those guys that can't run anymore, but I can live for God. There's more and more surveys coming out about Christianity. And because it is lost, we've lost our attention span, it's become more and more of a fad. Christianity is like any other fad. There's weight loss fads, there's clothing fads, there's health fads, there's get your hair back fads, there's every kind of fad. But it's a fad. And if you put an E on the end of fad, it fades. It fade. It's a fade. It comes and goes. Christianity is like that. So more and more, not only young people, but other people are falling into a new category of religion called the nun. Have you heard of this? Not N-U-N, N-O-N-E. Like none of the above. You remember those multiple choice questions you had as a kid? They have all of the above or none of the above. When it comes to religion, 28% of people say none of the above when it comes to religion. And it's not just Gen Z. It's not just Carlos's group. Carlos is actually organized. I came out of high school. I woke up the day after high school and go, now what? I had a bad job. I had no future. But Carlos has got it figured out. But there's a lot of people in Gen Z that have no clue on what they're going to do next. And it's not, like I said, just Gen Z. But people are going through a young life crisis. You know, a midlife crisis is normally between 40 and 60. I'm in an old life crisis. You know what the difference is between a young life crisis and an old life crisis is? More than likely, the old life crisis isn't going to last as long. But a midlife crisis is 40 to 60, and it takes 3 to 5 years to come out of. But now more and more people are waking up without purpose and without understanding what to do with themselves and feeling lost. And they create these exciting moments that you watch on Facebook. But you remember in this scripture, it says the evil one takes the seed away off the path. The evil one is the devil. And you might not believe the devil, but Jesus obviously did. And he had to confront the devil and overcome the devil. We sometimes look at it and think that we're doing okay because we compare ourselves to other people. We all know people that are probably doing worse than us. Maybe some are doing better than us. But the devil is the bird that picks the seed off the ground. The reason I had to put the manure on the grass to protect the seed from the birds. And the birds are constantly looking for opportunity, or Satan is constantly looking for opportunity. And so when you become part of the nuns, or you've shut the door on God, and you become that seed on the path, the inevitable effect is destruction. It's like the moth that is attracted to the light and bangs against the light to its own destruction. The moth can't seem to help itself. I watched, you watch these bugs just continually run into those lights. And I think that's the way we are too. The second one is Matthew 13, 20 and 21, as Jesus explains. The one whom the seed was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and at once welcomes it with joy, yet he has no substantial root in himself, but only temporary. And when pressure or persecution comes because of the word, immediately he stumbles and falls away, abandoning the one who's the source of salvation. Hard ground prevents growth. A lot of people don't want religion because they have bad memories of it. And you hear a lot of people say, I don't believe in organized religion. Or, I'm Christian, I'm good, I believe in God, but I don't need to go to church or read the Bible. God and we got it figured out. I think Christianity, when it says hard times and persecution, one thing about Americans, sometimes when things get hard, we quit. Not everybody, but I remember the first day of boot camp when I woke up. I got into my bunk at 2 a.m., flying in from Minnesota to San Diego, and they were all nice. Here's your bunk, and here's your blankets. Put your clothes over there. But at 5:30 in the morning, it was trash cans flying down all over, people screaming obscenities. Get out of bed. I had no idea where I was. I just know that if that fence wasn't up and those walls weren't up, I might have become a runner. I might have learned to run because it scared me what I had done for the next 4 years of my life. But that's the way it is with Christianity too. Christianity is not meant that you get baptized or you get right with God and everything goes smooth. Imagine that. You get right with God and you live in this protected, gated community where food is on the table, everything's plentiful, there's no bills, there's no problems. You look at the way Christians were treated, like Gabe talking about the crucifixion, being exposed, laying exposed on the cross. It is not easy to be a Christian sometimes. And sometimes you think you witness Christians getting the worst end of it than people that don't believe in God. But that's the whole thing. It's a temporary thing. Whatever we have here is temporary. That I'm as old as I am just blows me away because I see these pictures and I go, where did it go? And I look at kids growing up and I go, where did it go? But, the thing about hard ground, it needs to be softened. Jeff talked recently about redwoods, that their roots aren't so much going deep, but they spread across, and they connect with other roots of other trees to stabilize, and it becomes a community. That's what Christianity is. It's not your own roots. You might have deep roots, but you're still by yourself. There's still a good chance of a wind or some other pestilence or something taking you out. But you're in a community and your roots are tangled together, you have a chance of surviving. And that's the root systems each one of us has to have. We can help somebody get to that root system, but we each have to come up with our own lasting, committed plan to stay right with God. The third one, in Matthew 13:22, and the one whose seed was sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but worries and distractions of the world and deceitfulness, the superficial pleasures and delight of the riches choke out the word, and it yields no fruit. Weeds can be like sin. There's many people involved in all kinds of conspiracies, all kinds of, I don't care what any causes, but if you get so involved in a cause that you lose sight of the other important things in life, you kind of turned your back on God and a lot of times other people. Right now, the way that politicians talk to each other and talk about each other is such a bad example. It is such, they need classes on how to deal with it because it's being such a bad example to everybody else. I can't imagine children or anybody else going, I want to be like that guy, because it's all about clicks and viral moments and all that stuff. But it's not just the weeds of life, like our debt, like our problems, sometimes our job circumstances. It's also the weeds that are fun. It's football season. I love football season. In fact, it's almost unavoidable now to have without football season because football is almost on every night of the week. And if you're not, you can play fantasy football. You can have football pools at work. You can have sports betting. Football will take over, but it'll also take us away. It also distract us from God. It also turn off the lights on God because we get so busy with managing our fantasy teams or whatever. Or it can be our hobbies, our social clubs, our sports activities, our kids, whatever their situations are in. We pull out those weeds and new one can pop up. So you're always maintaining. Christianity is also maintaining your garden, always looking for the weeds that'll tangle you up. And the last one is the good soil. And then 23, this is what Jesus says. And the one whom the seed was sown on good soil, this is one who hears the word and understands it and grasps it. He indeed bears fruit and yields, sometimes 100, sometimes 60, and some 30. Soil that's receptive, teachable, hungry to serve, to participate, to help others. These are the people who daily live their lives for Christianity. I heard that John has been working with Bob, a neighbor of his, for a long time, and he baptized Bob this week. John is good soil because he worked hard on Bob. I remember when we had a men's night at Gabe's place, John brought Bob. Bob's older, frail. His wife is frail. So Bob can't even come to church. He can't leave his wife, and he's frail himself. But John was speaking at Gabe's house, opening his life up, and he asked Bob on the way home, "So what'd you think of the time with the guys?" He goes, "Oh, it was all right." But he said, "You talk too much." He told John, "It was all right, but you talk too much." Well, John could have said, "Well, good for you. Good luck. I'm out of here." But John stuck with him. And that's the good soil. What we have in here today, I short-filled cups for communion. I know it's going to be on Facebook. That's all right. But people stepped up, and Nancy and others came to my rescue, Isabella. They came to my rescue, and that's why you had an extended communion. It wasn't Gabe. It wasn't Gabe having extra time to think about your wicked ways. It was I forgot to make enough cups. I think Christianity is great, but it means Bible study. It means committed coming to church. It means committed getting with people and helping them to figure out their life, as people did with us. Our early years of marriage, a lot of people spent time. See, my motto in life is there is a God. I live like that because I know what it's like to be without God. And I've been in each one of these soils. I have personally been in all the soils, and that's the thing that Jesus doesn't say, but I want to convince you, is that is not a one-time deal. If you're on, you think, well, I got eaten by a bird, by Satan. But, as long as you're breathing, there's still time to regenerate. That bird's going to exit you at some point. So I think, when it came to the rest of the story, remember Paul Harvey, the rest of the story? I've missed that guy. For me, those four things are apparent in me. Thursday was my 37th spiritual birthday. I was baptized in 8/7 of 88. And I'll tell you how I knew. This is the second time being baptized. I knew I was being baptized right because in my mind I said, if I wait one more day, it'll be 8/8/88. Nobody will have that. That would be like on my monument. Baptized 8/8/88. And then the word of God came to my heart and said, "Do not test the Lord your God." And I said, "I'm ready right now." Because then I can tell this story of it could have been 8/8/88. But I was the seed on the path. In the 70s, when I was growing up, before in the military, we had what was called Jesus freaks. Remember the term Jesus freaks? They give you these little pamphlets. Sometimes it's like the Watchtower from Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff. You have these, how bad am I doing? You had these pamphlets, or people with holding signs, "Repent, the end is near." I remember being in New Orleans for this conference, and this lone guy is standing there, like a sea of people traveling up and down. He's just standing there with that sign, and nobody's paying him any. I thought, I wouldn't hang out with the guy at that moment, but maybe later. But I remember this friend of mine became a Jesus freak, and I totally avoided him. I shut him out. I couldn't, I didn't want to be around him. But over time, I got off the path into the soil with people like Susan and others. But I was also the seed on the hard ground. I spent time as a phony Christian. I would go to church. I went to a church that was 45 minutes long. Not 45 seconds, 45 minutes long. One song, not even a communion. Susan hated it, but it got me home in time for football because that was my weeds. I remember being there, and I thought, I'm a good guy. I go to church. I put $1 in the plate when it comes by because I'm too embarrassed not to put something in there. I was a chameleon Christian. We talked about this Friday. Chameleon meaning if I was hanging around Christians, I could talk to talk. If I was hanging around non-Christians, I could talk to talk. If there was dirty jokes going on, I could join in. I didn't know any dirty jokes, but I could phony laugh. But Christians, I could mention things like God loves us and stuff like this. Simple things. But I was hard ground. And it took a while to get deeper into Bible study and deeper into discovering who I really was. I was the seed in the weeds. When I was married and had children, I lost control of my life because it was all about activities. Not only my own, because I loved hockey and racquetball and all that, but the kids' activities. Susan and I loved to travel. I easily could have forgot God. We easily could have forgotten God. But somehow we stuck in there and realized that we wouldn't survive without God. And it took a lot of other people to help. But living in the good soil, which I feel like I'm living in the good soil now. I still have problems. I still get weeds. I still have to pull things out. I still get hard. I still become hard ground where Susan and others have to soften me up. But I know that I have no regrets for the years that I've spent. The amount of money that we've contributed, the things that I've seen, the miracles I've seen, the people that I've witnessed with lives changed, and seeing that we have a great community, not only here, but worldwide. We have a fellowship worldwide. Bob talking a couple weeks ago about being in San Diego and just the connections. Susan and I were in LA the last week, and we ran into people that we hadn't seen for years. There was one guy I saw in the Philippines last year, stage 4 cancer. He was told to get his house in order because he had a short time to live. That was over 4 years ago. And when I saw him in the Philippines, I thought, this is probably it. I saw him in LA. He's still going. I think the fellowship and God is keeping him around for a purpose. He's a great guy. But I am convinced that I need help. I'm convinced the soft ground I'm in is because of people and help. So let me end with this scripture. 1 Corinthians 3, 8, and 9. The man who plants and the man who waters have one purpose, and each will be rewarded according to that labor. But we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field. God bless.